Ever since Winter Soldier came out, and then with Civil War, when it came out, I've been saying that the Russos are God. Well, we now have Avengers Infinity War, and it proves that maybe the Russos are human after all. I don't mean that to sound negative. Given everything that had to be accomplished with this film, I don't think anyone could have done a better job than the Russos in directing this film. That's not to say it's a bad film. I'm not saying that at all. I enjoyed it. I would say this is a movie that is comprised of a lot of great pieces, individual pieces, but the film as a whole does not really add up to being greater than the sum of its parts. In other words, it's a film that has a lot of great pieces, but when they're put together, the film is just okay. It's just okay. I can definitely say of the 3 Avengers films that we have now, it's easily my favorite. First thing, it has a great villain. Josh Brolin as Thanos does a wonderful job. He looks great. He looks badass. I love the rendering of the imagery of the villain. When you first see him on screen, he comes on as a badass. He gets into a fight with the Hulk, and while I thought it was kind of bullshit that he would hand the Hulk his ass like he did, I guess I have to go see it again, but I'm told that he had the power gem at that point, so he was pretty much damn near unstoppable in terms of strength. So he beat the Hulk down, and he establishes very early on that he is someone to be reckoned with. He was a great villain, and really, this should put to rest once and for all this whole notion that I've heard that Marvel doesn't have any good villains. I don't know why people are saying that. I think a lot of the films have had great villains, and Thanos is one of them. There are 2 other villain standouts that I really liked. Those 2 were in the first battle scene in New York, where they were fighting Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man. But he was the guy who was, he had telekinetic powers, I guess. I think he had some strength, whatnot. And he was just smooth, man. Oh man, I love that guy. He makes me want to go to the comic book store down the street and ask my guy, yo, what books do I need to read to learn more about this guy? I think his name was Black Maw or something like that. Hope I got that right, because that sounds like it might be racial, but I think that's what I was told his name was. Then the other guy, there was another guy who was like bigger than the Hulk. He had like a battle axe or something, and he came with the business too. They really gave our heroes a battle. They gave him a battle. They gave him a great battle, which leads me to the second thing that I loved about this movie. All the battle scenes, all the fight scenes, I mean, they prove that the Russos know how to shoot an action scene.
Move, or you will be moved.
No question, hands down, the Russos are dope when it comes to setting the camera up to capture all the action. The only battle scene it was still good, but it didn't move me as much, was the Wakanda battle scene. Started off kind of great. I love the shield stuff going up. It reminded me a little bit of Phantom Menace, but this was in a good way. And like I say, it was a good scene, but I guess why it didn't work for me as well as the other battle scenes is probably 2 reasons. One, I kind of felt like I'd seen it already in Black Panther, where you have Black Panther and the good guys on the Wakandan battlefield fighting the enemy. And 2, the bad guys in that scene reminded me, what were they, like war dogs? They looked like the Carnage character from Spider-Man. And then you had one of the women who reminded me a lot of Steppenwolf. She had the horns coming out of her forehead. I just didn't find them that interesting. So the battle itself, while like I said, it was dope, it just didn't really do much for me. You know, the Hulkbuster thing, that was cool, but overall, that was my least favorite of the battle scenes. While it was still good, it was my least favorite. But the battle scene on Titan between Iron Man, Peter Quill, Mantis, I think Drax was there. I think all the Guardians were there except for Rocket. Spider-Man was there fighting Thanos. That was a great scene. I mean, I really felt like there were some consequences. There were some stakes at play in that scene. And part of that is because you had a great villain and you had some of the better heroes in that scene. And just, again, the strategy that they used to try to defeat Thanos, it was cool, except for then Peter Quill kind of bitches out a little bit. And every time a good guy had Thanos, just about ready to put some work in on him, they would stop and then start talking or pause for a second. I'm like, just end it. Stop talking to this guy. And Peter Quill was probably the biggest offender of that. I'm not going to say any more. But back to my whole thing about the villains creating substantial stakes, which made me more invested in the fight scenes. See, I didn't feel that way on Wakanda. I just felt like those dogs or those animals or whatever they were, to me, it was they were just like the Chitauri in the first Avengers. They were nothing more than video game targets. Maybe they were a little bit more threatening, but I just didn't care. I wasn't invested in them. They weren't that interesting to begin with. I'm gonna come back to Thanos. While I thought he was a compelling villain, his motivation just didn't make sense to me, or it just wasn't enough for me to buy into why he was doing what he was doing. Basically, and I don't think I'm spoiling anything, Thanos's quest is to get all the gems, as we all know, into the Infinity Gauntlet, and he wants to use that to eradicate, I think it was half of all life throughout the universe. He wants to do this because of what he experienced on Titan. What makes this Thanos compelling is that he is to a certain degree a little sympathetic. He's psychotic and warped. I just didn't buy that his reasoning that he applied to Titan, that he would necessarily apply that to the entire universe without at least studying planet by planet before he enacts his plan to make sure that it's required. I mean, even Galactus, who eats planets, decided that he needed a herald to inspect each planet before Galactus came and, tore each planet apart. All I needed was a little bit of dialogue where Thanos said, I've seen your Earth, I've seen how you treat it, poverty, famine, war, and yeah, I've deemed it necessary to get rid of half of all living things on planet Earth. That's all I needed. That indicates that he has a reason for doing what he wants to do, no matter how insane it is. I also think that if you're going to give me a villain as badass as Thanos, who still cries because of certain sacrifices for loved ones he has to make, no matter how implausible that whole portion of the story may have been, Thanos still has some warped sense of honor and code. I don't think it's implausible to think that he might spare some planets if he feels like they don't require or they have all the resources they need. It's like they tried to make him a noble villain, a warped noble villain, but it just kind of fell short. It almost would have been better if you had just gone with the regular trope of, I want to control the universe. That almost would have been better, and it would have fit Thanos just as easily. Of course, for me, somewhat of a plot hole is that if you get all of the gems in the Infinity Gauntlet, why go through killing half of the universe? Why not just give the universe what it needs to sustain all of the life that's in the universe? I didn't like the fact that at the beginning of this film, seems like the script wants to double down on all the silly jokes that we saw in Thor Ragnarok, which made that film not very pleasant for me. I just felt like there was a huge tonal shift between scenes involving certain characters at the beginning, and then towards the end, the last half of this film, it then wants to transition into becoming this apocalyptic, very serious, epic type of thing. And that's fine, but I mean, if you decide on a tone for a film and stick with it, I find that more entertaining. Now, if you decide to go with the serious, and when I say serious, I'm not talking about DC Batman v Superman type of serious. I'm talking about, like a Winter Soldier type of seriousness. If you opt for that and you want to punch it up with some jokes, that's fine. Winter Soldier did that very well. I think Civil War did that very well. But when I've got, at the beginning of the film, these heroes who are clearly about to embark in a battle, and that they're arguing about superhero ice cream flavors. Or I've got Drax, who thinks he's invisible while he's eating peanuts. Or I've got this oddly homoerotic scene that goes way too long. Well, all of them all the humor tries to go on too long. But I've got this weird scene where Peter Quill is talking about stroking Thor's muscles and whether or not Peter Quill has put on too much weight and who's the better looking between Thor and Peter Quill. I mean, these jokes, they're corny to begin with. So if you're gonna insert one of them, one or two in there, great. But know when to stop. And in all the cases, they just went on and on and on. And between Tony Stark, Thor, Peter Quill, Spider-Man, he's kind of a jokey character anyway. It seemed like there was one other I'm forgetting. It's like, it's enough already. And then you have Bruce Banner. Okay. I don't know what they're doing with this character. It started off in Ragnarok where they made him kind of a buffoon instead of the world genius level scientist that he is. But after the beginning scene where we see Thanos beat down the Hulk, the writers, for whatever reason, decide never to give us the Hulk again. Well, I know why they decided to do that. They didn't have a way of writing in the last half during that Wakandan battle that if they include the Hulk, then I guess it would be like, well, he would wipe out everybody. You know, so we got to get rid of the Hulk because he's too strong for us to make it challenging for him and make the scene work to any particular length or any sustainable length. Yet and still, we get Thor. Well, I don't want to give anything away. I'll just say that for the reasons they did not show us the Hulk, I believe, are the same reasons they probably shouldn't have given us Thor the way they gave us Thor in this film at the end. Speaking of Thor, for whatever ungodly reason, they give him like 20 minutes of screen time as he and Rocket go to this distant planet to try to retrieve his hammer or try to create a new hammer or a new weapon. And they meet up with a surprising guest star. I'm not going to give it away, and I'm not going to give away what happens. But this sequence takes like 20 minutes in the film. Totally unnecessary, totally adding to what felt like at a certain point, padding the screen time of this film to make it feel like an epic. But back to Banner. Again, I don't know how they're writing this guy. He's one of the smartest people on the planet. Why put him in the Hulkbuster suit and have him tripping and stumbling on the battlefield? Okay, now, so his battle with the big axe guy, one of the Black Order, that was nice, but I don't want to see Banner in the Hulkbuster suit. Banner should have been using his intellect in the lab with Shuri. Shuri and Banner have a little back and forth about how to best work on the vision, and I'm trying not to give too much away. And I'm like, okay, that was a great little character moment there between the two of them. I wanted to see more of that. Seeing Banner argue with this sister in Wakanda who is apparently a genius in of her own self, that would have made it more interesting. Throw somebody else in the Hulk suit, in the Hulkbuster suit. Put M'Baku in there as far as I'm concerned. I don't know, maybe that's a little bit far-fetched, but Banner is being turned into a ridiculous, buffoonish character, and I don't understand why they're doing that. I'm not going to say I didn't like this, but it just seemed like the movie was a little bit too sprawling. It's also seemed like the Guardians of the Galaxy got way more screen time, as did Thor, than some of the other characters that I like better, like Captain America, who got virtually hardly any screen time in this thing. And his return was probably the one I was most forward to looking to, next to Black Panther, who, you know, okay. Black Panther shows up in the last half of this film, and if you're surprised about that, you got to understand that when this was shot, they had no idea that Black Panther was going to be the phenomenon that it is. So let's just let that lie. We're not going to protest over that. I'm not going to protest over that. I think Black Panther got some shine. I just don't know why Thor and Guardians of the Galaxy seem like they got more screen time than others. Yeah, clearly there's a connection between Gamora and Thanos, but be that as it may, I would have liked to see more of Cap. I definitely wanted to see more of the Hulk. I'll tell you one character that got a lot of shine and blew me away, Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange has stepped up his spell game from his film to now. There's a scene where he casts a spell and he's kind of on his mage rocks. I'm not gonna say any more than that. He fills the screen. The analytical side of me was like, damn, where did he learn to do that? But I tell you what, just like I rolled with all of the features in Iron Man's suit that I'm not familiar with, where he can turn his feet into rocket jets, he can conjure up shields, he can create these bars that fly out and suspend alongside him and fire repulsor rays, all this stuff I'm not familiar with Iron Man. I just decided to roll with it, and so I was easily able to roll with Doctor Strange's newfound spells. I just feel like all that stuff should have been in his movie, you know? But it was so cool to see him put in some work in this film. The last thing I'll say about this film that kind of rubbed me the wrong way was the ending. Clearly what we see transpire is not going to hold. So it's like a thing for me. It's like, well, why do that if we know it's not going to be lasting? I thought it was corny what they did at the end of Batman v Superman. I think it's corny here, and I know I've kind of mildly spoiled it. It's nothing that no one who's into the MCU hasn't kind of surmised is going to happen. It's like, why go through that when it's not going to take? We know there's no suspense. The lack of Ant-Man and the lack of Hawkeye. Well, Hawkeye. Okay, I'm not really missing him, but Ant-Man. We got an Ant-Man and the Wasp film coming out relatively soon, and Ant-Man's not in this film. And then the events that happen at the end of this film, it makes it so that Ant-Man and Wasp, you have to kind of juggle where you place them in the timeline of these movies, and it becomes like this magic act simply for the fact that we know this is a corporate machine just cranking these movies out. I don't know why we can't make the story so that we don't have to jump through hoops to make it fit to a certain timeline or a certain conveyor belt of movie making. So why do it? Why string it along like that? Why even go there when there's no suspense or no consequences at all, other than, oh, well, how are they going to rectify that? I don't know. Like I say, it feels like a corporate machine. This film kind of feels like one of the biggest corporate stamped products of the MCU. But by all means, I do recommend this movie. I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 reels. And I think everyone should go see it. There's a lot of stuff in here that makes it worth seeing. I've told you, great fight scenes, great battle scenes, just great camera work, good acting, decent writing. Thanos is an amazing work of CGI. Josh Brolin put his foot on that role. Just go see it knowing that it's a flawed film. You may not think that. I know a lot of people are championing this film, saying it's the best one yet. I disagree. But I think it's a good film. It's a decent film. It's a film worth seeing. I plan to go see it again next weekend just to see all the details that I missed. I might do another review to see if my opinion has changed, since this movie is so dense and so layered. So yeah, go check it out. 3 out of 5 reels. The Russos may not be God, but they're still some of the best Marvel directors around. And that's the Martini.